Why, hello, friends. It's a pleasure to see you again. Have you been well since the last time we were together? We do hope so. We care oh so much about each and every one of you. Whether you're big, tall, short, or small, a singlet or a system, we're glad that you can join us here and listen to our stories. Speaking of, how are we enjoying the Forgotten Door, eh? Things are picking up quite nicely, don't you think? Particularly after Little John and Thomas Bean went with Detective Bush to the Macklins, and, through quite the process of trial and elimination, found that Tip and Lenny had secreted the fishing rods and the rifle deep in the underbrush. But, thanks to Little John's unerring instincts, they were able to lead Detective Bush to the trophies. But what will happen next, we wonder? As Little John and Mr. Bean return home, what news will Mary have for them? What other interesting developments will occur? Well, we're about to find out. But first, are you ready yet? You should know the drill by now. Do you have your blankie, or your stuffy, or your pipe, or your bowl, or your mug, or your glass of wine, or whatever it is that helps you to relax? If not, go and get them. We'll be right here waiting for you. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have them now? Excellent. Now then, sit back, put your best listening ears on, as we listen to Chapter 8 of The Forgotten Door. The Forgotten Door by Alexander Key. Illustrated by Dom Lupo. Chapter 8. He is Summoned. Rascal was whining forlornly when they got back, begging for Little John to take him out. Little John went over and petted him, quieting him with a promise for tomorrow, then followed Thomas into the house. It had been a long and difficult day, and he knew that Thomas was badly upset by all that had happened. That was the worst of it, knowing how Thomas felt, and knowing it had all come about because the Beans were trying to help him. Tonight, if it would have made matters any easier for the Beans, he would not have hesitated to go away. He could leave his knife in payment for Rascal, and he and the big dog could take their chances in the forest. But it was too late for that. It solved nothing, and it would only make things harder for Thomas. Sally and Brooks were still eating when they reached the kitchen. They were bursting with questions, but Mary Bean silenced them. "You look beat," she said anxiously to Thomas. "What happened up at Macklin's?" Thomas told her. "So," he finished wearily, "the cat's about out of the bag. Or it will be soon if Bush has his way." "People!" Mary blazed. "Why do they want to make so much trouble? But we'll talk about it after you eat. You two get washed. You're filthy." They cleaned up and ate silently. Finally, Little John said unhappily, "I'm awfully sorry about this, Mr. Bean. I wish I could do something to... Sorry? Why should you be sorry? Because of the trouble I'm causing." Thomas sat up. "If there's any apologizing to be done, I'm the one to do it. I apologize for the stupidity and meanness of my race, but honestly, we're not all like the ones you've met here. Actually, there are some pretty nice people in this world, only there aren't enough of them. It's the troublemaking kind that keeps all the rest of us on the jump and makes things the way they are. Maybe nature intended it that way, to keep prodding us so we'll learn faster. I don't really know." He spread his hands. "I wish I knew what Bush is going to do." "When he left," said Little John, "he was thinking about the Marines and finding out about Captain O'Connor." Mary Bean gasped. "Oh no, that would tie it." Sally, helping with the dishes, said, "John, how did you know what Mr. Bush was thinking?" "I just knew." Sally wrinkled her nose at him. "I know how you knew." In a stage whisper, she added aloofly, "You read minds." Brooks gaped at her. "You're crazy as a hoot owl." Mary said, "Sally." But Sally went on quickly. "John can. I've known it since yesterday. It's
Lots of little things, like always passing me the right dish at the table before I ask for it. She made a face at Brooks. You didn't know it, smarty. That proves girls are smarter than boys, except that John's smarter than any of us. I think it's wonderful. I wish I could do what he can.
Thank Pete you can't, Brooks said with feeling. Life wouldn't be worth living around here. He stared at Little John. Sally's only kidding, isn't she? Thomas Bean said, It's true, Brooks, but stow that down your hatch and keep it battened. He frowned at Mary. If Bush finds out about the O'Connors, that's all he needs to know. Fingerprints won't matter. He'll haul us into court and we'll be forced to tell everything. Thomas began snapping his fingers. Suddenly, he lurched to his feet. I'm going to call Miss Josie and arrange a private talk with her. She's the only really understanding person around here, and if she knows the facts ahead of time, she'll... What's the matter, Mary? Mary was shaking her head.
I've already tried to get her on the phone. I got so worried when you were up at Macklin's that I had to do something. Miss Josie is away tonight. Tomorrow she's got a busy morning in court and she's flying to Washington immediately after. She won't be back until Monday.
Thomas sat down and began snapping his fingers again. Little John asked, Who's Miss Josie?
She's Miss Cunningham, Mary told him. Judge Cunningham, really. But everyone calls her Miss Josie. She handles all the juvenile cases. Oh, I wish we could talk to her.
She looked knowingly at Thomas.
Did you have any luck this morning? Rock hunting?
Yes, very good luck. I'm taking John back first thing tomorrow. It may help his memory.
Hey, can I go with you? Brooks asked. School's out and...
No, Thomas said firmly. This is too important. John's got to recover his memory. His best chance is to start over there on the mountain where he first found himself. We can't have anyone along.
It's way past bedtime, Mary reminded them, and it's been a day. Everybody scoot.
Little John awoke to a misty morning, with a threat of rain over the ridges. The rain notwithstanding, he and Thomas set out on foot at daybreak, taking the shortcut through the gap that led to the other valley. This time Rascal went with them. To Thomas's amazement, the big dog behaved himself and kept quiet, even when deer were sighted. It started to pour when they reached the cave, but neither cared. There was something to be learned here, if they could find it. While Thomas crawled about in the dim interior, chipping experimentally with his hammer, Little John sat down and tried to think. Thomas, glancing at him, said, Maybe you'd better not try to remember. Sort of let your mind go blank. It might come to you easier. He did as Thomas suggested. Even being here was exciting. Shadows of thought seemed to be crowding into the background of his mind. While he waited for them to take form, he drew out his knife and idly began to carve a twisted piece of root that lay near the cave entrance. The thought shadows refused to take form that morning, but the piece of root did. When Thomas Bean saw it, the rain had stopped, and the root had become the striking head of a man with a curious cap over his long hair, and one hand clenched under his chin as if he were lost in deep thought. Little John was surprised that Thomas should make such a fuss over it. But doesn't everybody do things like this? Hardly. It would take a genius like Rodin to produce such a head. Here, look what I found. It was under that fall of rock. Thomas held out a woven cap, much like the one in the carving. Little John put it on. It fitted him. The cap, said Thomas, proves, at least to me, that you landed here in the cave. It was probably knocked off when you fell and covered up. It's a wonder you weren't killed. Anyway, the cap also proves that Mary's idea of the door is correct. You see, something had to happen in here to make that rock fall on your cap. It isn't the kind of rock that ever splits and breaks into fragments like this, unless a force as strong as a lightning bolt hits it. Now, there's no mechanism in here or anything that moves. That means that the door and whatever it is that makes it work is on the other side. I mean the distant place where your people are. He was sure Thomas was right. He wondered with a longing he could not express if he had a father and a mother behind the door, and if he would ever see them again. Thomas said, Let's get back. I want to show Mary these things. Mary Bean's blue-green eyes were stormy when they returned. It started, she snapped before they could show her the cap and the carving. The phone's been ringing all day. Thomas, do you know that we've been hiding a wild boy that spits fire, jumps 100 feet, and eats live rattlesnakes? That's how this tale has grown. I'd like to
Choke Gilby and stuff Anderson bush down his throat." She paused for breath. "That's only the half of it. There was a reporter here about an hour ago. I told him he'd been hearing a lot of nonsense, and that we had only the young son of a friend of ours visiting us. I don't think he believed me, and I'm sure he'll be back because he wants pictures. He had hardly left when this came." Angrily, she thrust out a stiff, folded paper. "What is it?" Thomas asked. "A summons to the juvenile court, Monday morning at 10 o'clock. Thomas whistled. "Bush has found out that the O'Connors didn't have any children. He sure worked fast. I'll bet he got on the phone first thing and called the Marine Personnel Office in Washington." He shook his head. "All we can do is keep John out of sight and pray that his memory comes back." "Did you make any progress today?" she asked. "Some." Thomas opened the knapsack and took out the cap. He explained about it. "It proves you're right about the door idea, and it tells us some other things." He paused and looked around. "Where are Brooks and Sally?" "I sent them out to pick wild strawberries where nobody can see them. That reporter caught Sally in the yard and tried to question her." "Well, we mustn't let Brooks, Sally, or anyone, even Miss Josie, know about the cave. If it's ever so much as mentioned, the news of it will spread and there'll be 1,000 people hunting for it. It'll be torn apart and blasted, and the pieces probably sold for souvenirs. But if it's never mentioned, it'll never be discovered. You can walk right by it and not know it's there. We've got to keep it that way. It's John's only means of getting back where he came from." "But how?" "How does it work, Mary? Only John's memory can tell us that. We're just guessing, but we figure it's a sort of threshold, a place where you land when you step through from the other side. My compass goes haywire in there, so maybe the Earth's magnetism had something to do with it. From the looks of it, it hasn't been used in ages." Thomas paused, then added, "When you think about it, there's no reason why it should ever be used again, except to get John back." Little John asked, "Why do you say that, Mr. Bean?" "Just this. If your people are as advanced as we believe they are, what have we to offer that they'd be the least bit interested in?" Thomas laughed. "I bet they took one look at us and decided we were best forgotten. They probably thought more of our wild creatures. Shouldn't be surprised if they carried some young ones home with them before we finished killing them all off." Thomas took the carving from the knapsack. "Have a look at this, Mary. John made it while I was poking around." Mary Bean studied the carving. She said nothing for a minute, but little John was aware of her amazement, the quick turning of her thoughts, and her sudden conviction. You think it looks like me," he exclaimed. "That it could be my father." "Yes, John, I do. It would almost have to be. And being what he is, I'm almost sure I know what he's doing this very minute. He's moving heaven and earth to get that door thing repaired so he can find you." Thomas snapped his fingers. "Of course! John's here by accident, and if that door were usable, he'd have been found before he left the cave. There's been no change in the place, so that means the thing hasn't been repaired yet." Suddenly, Mary asked, "John, can you write in your language?" "I don't know. I haven't tried." "Try it now. It's important. If your people came looking for you, they wouldn't know what had become of you, unless you left a message in the cave." "But if they are like I am," he told her, "they would only have to call, and I'm sure I would hear them even miles away. Still, if I were asleep..." He sat down at the table with paper and pencil and tried to remember symbols that might stand for thoughts. He doodled and made marks on the paper, but they were not marks with meaning. "I'm afraid I've forgotten how," he said. "But you must know your language," Mary insisted. "Remember the little song you sang the other day?" "I remember that, but I can't put it on paper. Do you suppose if I learned to write your language that it would help bring back the other? Brooks was showing me the alphabet the other night, and I can print that already. Maybe if you'll show me how to make words with it..." The writing lesson was interrupted by the telephone, and later by the return of the reporter. Little John hid in the front bedroom while Thomas spoke to the man. The reporter was not easily turned away this time. "Mr. Bean, you ought to be glad to get a little free publicity. It'll help your business. You'd be surprised at people who come out to your rock shop to..." "I'm quite aware of it," said Thomas, "and I don't want it. Miss Bean has already told you all about the boy. I can't help these crazy tales that are going around, but I'd advise you to be very careful what you print." "But at least you can let me take a picture of him, Mr. Bean. I know there's nothing in the tales, and I'd soft pedal all of that, but he's news, and I could do a nice little human interest story that would help you a lot here."
"Sorry," said Thomas, showing him the door. "No pictures, please." "Okay, but there'll be plenty of pictures taken when Monday comes." "What do you mean by that?" "Mr. Bean, it's already common knowledge that the boy's a juvenile delinquency case. Of course, we're not allowed to print anything like that, but the Wild Boy angle is something else. You can't stop news, Mr. Bean, and that boy is news. I'll see you Monday, Mr. Bean."
Well, now, wasn't that quite the chapter? It seems that not all was quiet on the home front when Mr. Bean and Little John were away, eh? It seems that word has gotten out, and the wild tales have spread, and even worse than that, the press has caught on. But at last, it seems the worst part of it is that they've now been summoned to court. What will Judge Josie have to say about the situation? Will Thomas and Mary be able to convince her of Little John's innocence? Or will Detective Bush, so to speak, put his foot in it? Excellent questions, and ones that we'll have to answer next time. For now, though, we'd like to thank you for watching, and ask that you click like, share, and subscribe, and always remember that you are loved, that you are strong, and that you are not alone. I'm Percival. Thank you for watching.